The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never convened faster. Within 6 hours of the incident, representatives from 47 species filled the grand chamber on Station Harmony, their varied forms casting strange shadows under the Council's pale light. At the center of it all stood Queen Elena Morrison of Earth, her hands clasped behind her back, her expression carved from stone. Across from her, Empress Vel'thara of the Krythian Empire loomed on her elevated platform, her forearms spread wide in a gesture of righteous fury. The Krythians were an ancient race, their chitinous bodies gleaming like polished obsidian, their mandibles clicking with barely contained rage. This human, Vel'thara's translator rendered her harsh vocalizations into standard galactic speech, sent an operative to murder me at the Unity Gala. We have recordings. We have witnesses. We demand justice. The chamber erupted in clicks, hums, and voices from a dozen different species. High Chancellor Drex, a towering crystalline being who presided over the council, raised one faceted limb for silence. Queen Morrison, you stand accused of ordering the assassination of a sitting head of state. How do you answer these charges? Elena stepped forward, her boots echoing on the polished floor. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's united government, deep blue with silver trim, and she carried herself with the precision of someone who'd spent 20 years in military command. I answer them with a question, Elena said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Why would I order the assassination of someone who was never the target? The silence that followed was absolute. Vel'thara's mandibles clacked sharply. Lies and deflection. We have proof of an assassination attempt, Elena agreed. But not of the target you believe. She touched the interface on her wrist, and a holographic display materialized above the council floor. This is the security footage from the Unity Gala. Timestamp 21-7 hours. The recording showed the grand ballroom, hundreds of dignitaries mingling beneath glittering chandeliers. The camera focused on Empress Vel'thara, resplendent in ceremonial armor, as she conversed with a group of ambassadors. Then, barely visible in the crowd, a figure in dark clothing moved with purpose toward the Empress. There, Vel'thara hissed. Your operative, caught on approach before my guards neutralized the threat. Wrong, Elena said quietly. She zoomed the image, then shifted the angle. Look, 3 meters to the Empress's left. A new figure appeared in the frame. Ambassador Osei, Earth's chief diplomatic representative, stood laughing at something one of the Valdrine delegates had said. She was young, brilliant, and entirely unaware of the danger. The operative wasn't moving toward the Empress, Elena continued. The trajectory was always aimed at Ambassador Osei. Your security team simply assumed the Empress was the target because she's the highest value individual in the room. High Chancellor Drex leaned forward, light refracting through his crystalline body. This is conjecture. What proof do you offer? Elena's eyes never left Vel'thara. The poison. Your medical teams recovered a micro-dart from the scene, didn't they? What did the analysis show? For the first time, Vel'thara hesitated. One of her aides, a smaller Krythian in technical robes, stepped forward and whispered urgently. The Empress's compound eyes darkened. The toxin, Vel'thara said slowly, was inconclusive. Liar, Elena said, and the word dropped like a stone into still water. The toxin was neurotoxin 7-alpha, species-specific, fatal to humans within minutes, completely harmless to Krythians. The chamber exploded into chaos. Representatives surged to their feet, translators struggling to keep pace with a cacophony of voices. High Chancellor Drex's crystalline form flared bright, demanding order. Silence! The word resonated through the chamber with physical force. Drex turned to Vel'thara. Is this true? Vel'thara's mandibles worked silently for a long moment. The analysis was preliminary. We assumed contamination, or perhaps a binary agent requiring a second component. You assumed, Elena said, because the alternative was impossible. Why would humans try to kill their own ambassador and make it look like an attack on you? She paused, letting the question hang. Unless someone wanted exactly that reaction. Elena expanded the holographic display, bringing up a new file. 3 weeks ago, Ambassador Osei transmitted a classified report to Earth. She discovered evidence of prohibited weapons development in the outer Krythian systems, antimatter warheads, and direct violation of the Harmony Accords. Preposterous! Vel'thara surged forward. You fabricate evidence to cover your crime. Then explain the neurotoxin, Elena shot back. Explain why an assassination weapon that can't hurt you was used in an attempt on your life. Explain why the trajectory analysis shows the operative was never aiming at you in the first place. Commander Jake Torres, Elena's head of security, stood from his position behind the human delegation. He was a bear of a man, scarred from a dozen conflicts, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. We have more, Jake said. He projected another image, this one showing encrypted communications, intercepted transmissions between a Krythian military cell and an unknown coordinator. They discussed the Morrison problem and eliminating the witness. The timestamp is 4 days before the gala. The Empress's aide had gone very still. Vel'thara herself seemed to shrink slightly on her platform. This is a faction, Elena said, her voice softer now but no less intense. A group within your own government that wants war with humanity. They orchestrated this entire scenario. Kill our ambassador, make it look like we tried to kill you, and watch as our species tear each other apart. High Chancellor Drex rotated slowly, his faceted surface catching the light. These are grave accusations, Queen Morrison, but they are still only accusations without corroboration. Then let's get corroboration, Elena said. I request a full forensic review of the toxin, an independent analysis of the trajectory data, and a deep investigation into the communications logs. If I'm wrong, I'll submit Earth to any sanctions this council deems appropriate. But if I'm right, she looked directly at Vel'thara, then the Empress and I have mutual enemies to root out. The Krythian leader stood motionless for what felt like an eternity. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I did not order this. If what you say is true, if elements within my own government conspired to murder a diplomatic representative and frame humanity for an attack on my person, her mandibles clacked together sharply, then they have committed treason of the highest order. Agreed, Elena said. The question is, what do we do about it? What happened next unfolded with terrifying speed. The council voted to conduct the investigation, assigning a neutral team of forensic specialists from the Valdrine Consortium. But before the session could adjourn, alarms shrieked throughout Station Harmony. Jake was at Elena's side instantly, his hand on his sidearm. Report! A Valdrine technician's voice crackled over the station-wide comm. Multiple Krythian warships dropping out of quantum drive. They're not responding to hails. They're powering weapons. Vel'thara's entire body went rigid. Impossible. I gave no such order. Of course you didn't, Elena said grimly. But someone did. Your hardliners just made their move. The main display shifted, showing the tactical situation. 7 Krythian destroyers had formed a blockade around Station Harmony. On the station itself, internal sensors were detecting weapon signatures in multiple sections. There on the station, Jake growled. Assault teams. They must have been in place before the session even started. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, discarding plans as quickly as she formed them. They're going to kill us both. Make it look like the peace talks failed. No witnesses, no evidence, just 2 dead leaders, and an inevitable war. Vel'thara's guards had formed a protective circle around the Empress, but Elena noticed something. The Krythian soldiers looked uncertain, their weapons lowered, eyes darting between their ruler and the exits. Your guards are loyal to you, Elena observed. They didn't know about this. My personal guard, yes, Vel'thara confirmed. But the military command structure. She trailed off, horror dawning in her compound eyes. General Korth. He argued most strongly for retaliation against Earth. I thought he was simply being cautious, protective. He was being ambitious, Elena corrected. And now he's making his play. The station shuddered as an explosion rocked the lower decks. Jake was already coordinating with Earth's security detail, but the numbers were bad. 30 human soldiers against what sensor suggested were over 200 Krythian special forces, plus the warships outside. High Chancellor Drex's voice rang out. All council members, evacuate to the emergency shelters. This session is suspended under crisis protocol. But Elena wasn't moving toward the shelters. She was moving toward Vel'thara. What are you doing? The Empress demanded as Elena approached. Saving both our lives, Elena said, and proving a point. Your rebels want us dead. Oh, the only way we survive is together. You would trust me? After all this? Elena smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. I trust that you want to live. I trust that you don't want a war that will devastate both our peoples. And I trust that you're smart enough to recognize a mutual threat when you see one. She held out her hand, an ancient human gesture. So what do you say, Empress? Shall we show these bastards what happens when they underestimate queens? Vel'thara stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out with one of her 4 limbs and clasped it. We fight, the Empress said. Jake immediately began coordinating. The human transport vessel Mercury is docked at Base 7. It's armed and shielded, and we can make it there if we move now. My ship, the Imperial Talon, is in Bay 3, Vel'thara countered. Better armor, better weapons, and crawling with potential traitors from your own military, Elena pointed out. We take the Mercury. Your loyal guards can form the vanguard. They moved as a single unit through the chaos of Station Harmony. The council chamber had emptied, delegates fleeing to various shelters and ships. Explosions echoed through the corridors, and twice they encountered firefights between station security and Krythian insurgents. The first real contact came at Junction 47. A squad of Krythian soldiers in unmarked armor rounded the corner, weapons already raised. For a split second, everything hung in balance. Then Vel'thara stepped forward, all 4 arms raised. Stand down! I am your Empress, and I command you to cease this treasonous action. The lead soldier's mandibles clicked uncertainly. General Korth said you were compromised, that the humans had taken you hostage. Do I look like a hostage? Vel'thara's voice carried the weight of generations of Imperial authority. General Korth has committed treason. He orchestrated an assassination attempt on a galactic ambassador and attempted to frame humanity for an attack on my person. These are his crimes, not humanity's. The soldiers looked at each other, confusion evident in their postures. One lowered his weapon slightly. That's when the plasma bolt came from behind them, striking the wavering soldier in the back. He collapsed, his armor smoking, and the corridor erupted into chaos. Jake and the human security team returned fire immediately, their kinetic rounds punching through Krythian armor with brutal efficiency. Vel'thara's loyal guards formed a shield wall with their bodies, protecting both leaders as they pushed forward. The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds, but in that time, 3 humans and 5 Krythians died. The corridor was a ruin of scorched metal and broken bodies. Keep moving, Elena ordered, her voice hard. She'd seen too much combat to freeze now. They reached the docking bay to find it sealed. Jake worked the override codes while the rest of the group set up defensive positions. Through the bay windows, they could see the Mercury, a sleek diplomatic vessel bristling with weapons that were very much not diplomatic. Almost there, Jake muttered, his fingers flying over the interface. These lockdown protocols are... Got it! The bay doors hissed open and they rushed inside. But they weren't alone. A full platoon of Krythian special forces occupied the bay, their weapons trained on the Mercury. Standing at their center was a massive Krythian in general's armor, his carapace decorated with battle honors. General Korth. Your Majesty, Korth said, his translator rendering his voice with oily satisfaction. How fortuitous. You've saved me the trouble of hunting you through this station. Vel'thara stepped forward, fury radiating from every line of her body. You dare commit treason, Korth? You dare orchestrate murder and blame it on an allied species? Allied? Korth laughed, a harsh chittering sound. The humans are weak, Empress. Soft. They've poisoned you with their ideals of cooperation and peace. The Krythian Empire was built on strength, on conquest. Under your rule, we've become nothing more than another voice in the Council's chorus. Under my rule, Vel'thara hissed, We've had 30 years of prosperity and growth. Stagnation. Korth spat. But no more. You'll die here, along with the human queen. My forces will claim the humans murdered you in a desperate escape attempt. And when Earth inevitably retaliates, we'll crush them and reclaim our rightful place as the dominant power in this sector. Elena had been quiet, assessing the situation. They were outnumbered 5-1, trapped in a docking bay with no cover. But she hadn't survived 2 decades of military service by giving up when the odds were bad. You're making a mistake, General, Elena said calmly. Am I? Korth turned his attention to her. Please, enlighten me. You assume we came here unprepared? You assume we didn't know about your little conspiracy? Elena smiled. We've known for 2 weeks. Korth's mandibles stopped moving. Impossible. Ambassador Osei discovered your weapons program, yes. But what she didn't tell anyone except me was that she'd also uncovered evidence of your coup plot. The assassination attempt, the frame job, all of it. Elena took a step forward. We let it play out because we needed you to commit. We needed you to show your hand so we could cut it off. You're bluffing, Korth said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Am I? Elena touched her wrist interface. Commander Torres, execute protocol revelation. Jake grinned savagely and pressed a sequence on his own device. Throughout the station, throughout the Krythian fleet outside, and across every major news network in the galaxy, broadcasts began to play. They showed Korth meeting with extremist cells. They showed him authorizing the assassination attempt. They showed him ordering the attack on Station Harmony. Every crime, every conspiracy, laid bare in crystal-clear evidence. You see, General, Elena continued, as Korth stared in horror at the broadcasts, we didn't just know about your plot. We've been documenting it. Every communication, every meeting, every treasonous order. And now every species in the galaxy knows exactly what you are. Korth's soldiers were backing away, their weapons lowering. They'd just watched their general commit treason on a galactic stage. Whatever loyalty they'd had was crumbling in real time. You, Korth's voice was barely a whisper. You used us. We used your arrogance, Elena corrected. You thought humans were weak because we prefer diplomacy. You thought we were naive because we believe in cooperation. But you forgot something important about humanity, General. We're very, very good at war. We just choose not to be unless we have to be. Vel'thara stepped beside Elena, and in that moment, they presented a united front. General Korth, by the authority vested in me as Empress of the Krythian Empire, I strip you of your rank and declare you guilty of high treason. You will stand trial for your crimes. Korth looked around at his soldiers, saw the disgust and anger on their faces, and realized he'd lost. His mandibles clacked, once, twice, then he lunged for his sidearm. He was fast, but Jake Torres was faster. The human commander's shot took Korth in the shoulder, spinning him around. Vel'thara's guards were on him in seconds, restraining the general with brutal efficiency. The crisis was over. The Krythian warships outside, their crews having seen the same broadcasts, were already standing down. Station Harmony's security forces were rounding up the insurgent cells throughout the facility. Elena watched it all unfold with grim satisfaction. Then she turned to Vel'thara. Your empire's going to have some house cleaning to do. The Empress's laugh was tired but genuine. As will your government, I suspect. This conspiracy required accomplices on both sides. Agreed. Elena held out her hand again, but we can do that cleaning together, as allies, as partners. Vel'thara took the hand, her grip firm. I underestimated you, Queen Morrison. I won't make that mistake again. Good, Elena said, because humanity doesn't want enemies. We want friends, partners, species we can stand beside when threats emerge. But we're not helpless, and we're not naive. We know the galaxy is dangerous. We just refuse to let that danger define us. In the days that followed, the full scope of the conspiracy unraveled. Korth had been planning his coup for years, slowly placing loyalists in key positions throughout the Krythian military. The weapons development Ambassador Osei discovered was meant to give the hardliners the firepower they needed to challenge the Council, but Elena's counterintelligence operation had been even deeper. Human agents had infiltrated the conspiracy months ago, feeding information back to Earth. The assassination attempt at the gala had been allowed to proceed just far enough to gather evidence. With Ambassador Osei protected by a personal shield she didn't even know she was wearing. The operative caught on camera had been a human intelligence officer, deliberately positioned to be seen, to trigger the exact reaction that would force the conspirators into the open. It was ruthless, it was risky, and it was utterly, devastatingly effective. At the formal session where the conspiracy findings were presented, Elena stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time, Vel'thara stood beside her. "We've heard testimony that humanity knew of this conspiracy in advance," High Chancellor Drex said. "That you allowed events to unfold that put lives at risk, including that of Empress Vel'thara herself." "We took calculated risks," Elena admitted. "And yes, we gambled with lives. But the alternative was allowing this conspiracy to fester, to grow, until it exploded into a full-scale war between our species. Thousands would have died. Millions, perhaps. We chose to stop it before it reached that point. By using us," one of the council members, a gaseous being named Whisper of Storms, said. "By manipulating events. By gathering evidence," Elena corrected. "By documenting crimes so thoroughly that no one could deny them. Yes, we could have arrested Korth earlier, broken up his cells before they acted. But then what? We'd have a martyr, conspiracy theories, a festering resentment that the Empress was too weak to stand up to humanity. Instead, we have proof, we have truth, and we have a stronger alliance because of it." Vel'thara spoke then, her voice carrying through the chamber. Queen Morrison's methods were unconventional, even disturbing, but they worked. "My empire is purged of traitors. The weapons program is dismantled. And I stand here, alive, because she chose to risk everything to prevent a war neither of us wanted." The vote to censure Earth for its intelligence operations failed spectacularly. Instead, the Council passed a resolution commending both Earth and the Krythian Empire for their cooperation in rooting out extremism. Later, in a private meeting, Vel'thara and Elena shared a drink, a rare vintage from the Valdrine homeworld. "You know," Vel'thara said. "When humanity first petitioned to join the Council, many species thought you were too young, too aggressive, too dangerous. And now?" Elena asked. "Now they know they were right. You are dangerous." Vel'thara's mandibles curved in what Elena had learned was the Krythian equivalent of a smile. "But you're dangerous to our enemies, not to your friends. That makes all the difference." Elena raised her glass. "To dangerous friendships, then." "To dangerous friendships," Vel'thara agreed. As they drank, Elena looked out at the stars visible through the station's viewport. Somewhere out there, other threats lurked, other conspiracies, other dangers, other species who might underestimate humanity's capacity for both peace and war. Let them, Elena thought. Let them think humans were soft because they chose diplomacy. Let them think humans were weak because they valued cooperation. They'd learn the same lesson Korth had learned, the lesson the galaxy was slowly beginning to understand. Humanity didn't survive by being the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced. Humanity survived by being smarter, by thinking 3 moves ahead, by turning enemies into allies and conspiracies into opportunities. And if that wasn't the most human thing in the galaxy, Elena didn't know what was. The story of the attempted assassination would echo through the stars for generations. It would become a cautionary tale, a reminder that underestimating humans was always a mistake, because humanity didn't just survive in this vast, dangerous galaxy. They thrived. They adapted. They won. And they did it by being exactly what they'd always been: unpredictable, resourceful, and absolutely undeniably human.